Any questions for either of our panelists?
Actually, it's not a question, but I would like to share a story how I got to know Anne. In our human foundation in Oslo West, we were drawing together with the team of the Oslo West project of the foundation the long-term strategy. And the long-term strategy is to create a center of education and learning which gather many different disciplines for one goal, and that is to connect to our origin and to know our oneness. And because this kind of objective is not philosophical, it is real, it needs lots of sciences. And then I was with our Oslo West in Aswan, and very strangely, we went in Nubi house, and then we decided, some of us say, let us have a coffee in Cataract. And because it's a very nice place, and we can see very nice scenery. And we had someone who told us there was one specialist here who is longing to make something, a project in an elephant island, and I think her ideas is very similar to yours. And he said, yes, okay, whenever we can communicate. And we were sitting in Cataract, and he phoned us. He said, Dr. Anne, now in Cataract, can she meet you? Unbelievable. And then she came and we talked, and then we find that how much we have in common. And we met again and again, and then we are in the process with the Human Foundation and other organizations in Egypt to make her dream and our dream come true, because her dream is ours. And then it's very, very interesting. It's communication on another level, but it needs communication on Earth as well. So that's what I would like to just share.
So questions, or shall we? Okay.
I had a question for, forgot. Sorry.
I had a question for Anne. I found your talk fascinating and mind expanding, and the interdisciplinary quality of it was made me wonder. I mean, I looked at your curriculum vitae, the little bios that we have, and so I could look at your academics, but what I really wanted to know was what drew you to this work, and what in your heart drew you to this amazing synthesizing of these fields. I was curious.
Ooh, I remember talking to Dr. Alia when we were sitting down in Cataract in Aswan. I said, what really triggers me is the link between nature and culture. And Aswan is the place where you can really get that. But I'm coming from museum communication, and I'm coming from service design and design theory, and from art and communication. So it's the culmination of everything. And I think what is currently needed is new ways of learning. So if we want new ways of learning, we have to see who do we include. Yeah, and this is not only academic learning, because you find in the tourism industry it's not working because you have certain circles of knowledge, and especially in Egypt you have huge amounts of people who are excluded from knowledge. So how can we, and this is not only a question of Egypt, but this is generally a question, how can we build new structures of learning which are inclusive, mutual, co-creative, and all the keywords that we know? You talked about participation. This is what it is about. How can we do this? If architects want to build something for communities, they have to be able to talk to the people. Otherwise, you have architectural structures where people do not want to live, and then they start destroying them, and it's a continuous circle. So it's mainly about the idea of being obsessed with sort of cultural history interest and how to communicate it to people.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Yeah.
Wegdi.
Thank you. My question to Anne, I need to know, is the government is involved in this project or is still thinking?
No, it's not involved. But funny enough, I developed it in cooperation with students from different universities. And was always taking it a bit further, but to let it go through. I think the Ministry of Tourism should be interested in the mechanism of creative industries for tourism development. They don't quite get it yet, I think. Yeah. No. There's a lot of literature about it. It's well documented how this mechanism is working. Yeah. It's not my genius in invention. Sort of, it's Austria trained this. Other countries trained this, and they sort of exemplified how this is working. If you support creative industries, that this has an impact on tourism. And it's not marketing something for tourism, but it's sort of supporting the communities to develop this so that they get the law of attraction working, sort of, and they will attract the people that are interested in what is happening then.
Yes. I was wondering if feminist methodologies will bring about this innovation in urban development, and at what stage or how do you think the profane space will become sacred space?
Can you say the beginning of the question again? What kind of?
Feminist methodologies.
Yeah, no, I got that.
Yeah. How profane space will become sacred space.
Yeah. Or how sacred space becomes profane space, because
So
we deal with the.
Yeah, so at what stage does, let's say, traveling or tourism become pilgrimage?
Yeah, that's nice. I remember when I was a student, an art student, I did pilgrimages to exhibitions of artists I adored. I went to Paris to see a certain picture. I went to the Sistine Chapel to see the Michelangelo. And this is how you go to places, go to architecture, we visit temples, and you can see them as memory in built form. And what kind of memory is this? What is the stored information and the stored knowledge inside? So the veils become very thin. And I think it's rather a question of how you approach it. If you approach it sort of in a loud, fast way, which is sort of taking all the sacredness of a place, or if you find new ways of immersing and into these sacred fields, and then, I would not say it would be something like sacred pilgrimages, but I think art is a way of immersing yourself to surroundings in order to let the genius of the place do its work. And the feminist theory part, definitely, because the methodology of inclusion and this whole lab theory, living lab methodology, it's very much based on inclusion, and these are topics from feminist theory, especially concerning planning and inclusion into planning.
I had in mind not only inclusion, I'm talking of different feminist methodologies that exist even in terms of, epistemology. What knowledge is being produced, by whom, and how.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So women also, there are different, ways. You have the empirical theory, you have the feminist standpoint theory, you have the postmodernist, model.
Yeah.
So different kind of knowledges are being produced.
Yeah.
It depends who's producing it.
Exactly, but the whole idea of knowledge production, and this is why a factory is based on the idea that knowledge is produced. And it is produced from a perspective. And it is about understanding that it is about diverse perspectives and variety of perspectives in order to generate full communications. Yeah.
I have a question for Wayne, okay, about the Sustainable Development Goals. And I know that women are at the center because reduction of poverty will impact women, because maternal mortality, all of that. But I also want you to tell us a little bit more about the link, you know, and the impact on women if these goals are achieved.
Wow. Well, Eva already referred to the Millennium Development Goals 4 and 5 on maternal and child health. And we've, those of you who have been following the MDGs would know that there has been a considerable mobilization of resources to address those goals. And they have come down. The figures that Eva gave are still drastic, but they're coming down. And the MDGs have, we were asked to concentrate on 4 and 5, maternal and child health, about 4 years ago, because they were the goals that were failing, that were most likely to fail to reach what was achieved. So, but in those last 4 or 5 years, billions of dollars and masses of NGOs have addressed those better. So I expect the same thing will come on, well, be here now, thanks to Dr. Alia and those here. We're already working on the gender equality here. And it just needs to be mobilized massively to overcome the priorities that other people have from being left out of democracy and resources of their own country and having to resent to violence. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants violence, really. But it's got to be overcome by people who offer alternatives out of their hearts and inspiration and their hearts. So how? It's going to make, well, just think, if women were treated with graciousness and respect everywhere in the world, we'd have a very different world. My father always just said to us, and I was one of 4 boys, if I ever hear you speak to your mother in any other way than with respect, you wouldn't be able to sit down for a week. And we knew that he meant it. But that hasn't got across quite around the world. But it needs to. What other God should men worship than women? With respect and kindness, who create life. It will change, but it's going to take 14 years of work to achieve that goal.
Thank you very much. I think
There was someone at the
we'll
back.
end that. There is a question? One? Okay, fine.
Okay, actually, my intention was to ask Wayne, because all questions go to the feminist side. Though you asked him already. But I just, because I'm the second male presenter for the day, I just want to ask you whether I see that you are very compassionate about the SDGs. I do see them very complicated with the 17 goals and 169 indicators, and then uncountable number of indicators, to the extent that I think that developing countries will not be able even to measure them. How do you think about this?
Well, every country has had an opportunity to participate in the drafting of those goals. Some of them may not apply simply because the problems that are being created mostly by other countries and are influencing those countries, such as global warming affecting the island communities of the world. I honestly don't know at this stage. I'm just leaving off the MDGs and concentrating more. We're just focusing on that now. Many of you are probably better informed. But I know some of the people, and I've been with some of the people who have been working, and some of them are from NGOs, to make sure that those goals would be encompassing of everyone. And indeed, even if there are countries that are not affected, they can always generate people to go into and help other countries. My country has lots of resources and lots of prosperity and lots of people, and we're just bringing in 25,000 Syrian refugees in the last month. But I can tell you, when we start to celebrate our 150th birthday next year, we're going to be looking outward at how to make the rest of the world as prosperous and free as Canada, and to continue to send our young people and our resources out as widely as possible to help that happen. Not just look backwards and pat ourselves on the back, because we are just blessed. I don't know, but collaboration, say one last thing. Our dear friend here from Denmark, whose sister is married to Morris Strong, who brought us about the Stockholm Conference and the Rio Summit and contributed so much to the world. He had just passed away, and we were just celebrating his life with celebrations in Beijing and Geneva and in Ottawa. But one of the things that Morris asked me in Geneva in 1972 was, he said, we're getting letters threatening to totally disrupt the Stockholm Conference. The Dutch socialist millionaire is bringing jumbo jet loads of Zengakuren Japanese students and to disrupt the conference. What do we do about it? And I said, I don't know, but I'll find out. So I went down to the Dutch coast with all sorts of radical young people, a lot of American draft dodgers because the Vietnam War was still on. And I came back and I said, very simple, if you don't want young people to demonstrate, allow them to participate. And he said, how? I said, I don't know. But I know one thing, everybody has to be equal and have an opportunity to participate. And guess what? At the Stockholm Conference, there were so many young people came that the Swedes had to close the Danish border finally. There were so many thousands and tens of thousands, and the sweet smell of pot was floating over all of the areas where they were camped. And they wanted to know what they could do. And we said, well, why don't you address the items on the agenda? So they chose whaling. And they created a monstrous whale bigger than this room and demonstrated 1.5 miles long. And Morris Strong set aside this conference meeting so they could welcome them in. And that demonstration brought about an abstention from Canada that's going to be voting in favor of continuing whaling. Brought the Norwegians and the Japanese against it, but it passed the moratorium on whaling. That's a simple thing. But the main thing was that the young people, communists, non-communists, Christians, Boy Scouts, university students, met together with me before the conference, and I said, if you could ever work together as one voice I would fight to get you to address the plenipotentiary conference. That had never happened before, that an NGO had addressed a meeting of all governments that had the power of commitment right then. So Margaret Mead, whom some of you know, was a very famous sociologist, and Barbara Ward, the youngest ever, the first woman to be the editor of The Economist, came to me and said, young people, okay, wonderful. What about us? There's hundreds and hundreds of NGOs, beekeepers to Ladies Preservation, or Ladies Association for the Preservation of Borders, and NGOs, and they were there, wanting to participate. And they wanted to know how could they. I said to them, there's so many of you, 450 or 600 now, and it's in the 1,000 NGOs. How would you do it? I said, I don't know. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to hold briefings at 8 o'clock every morning, so you know what happened yesterday in the meeting, you know what's going to happen today. A very tight hour. And I said, nobody will come at 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, then they wouldn't know what's going on. They filled the Stockholm legislative buildings every morning at 8 o'clock. And we briefed them. And I had said to them, if you want to bring your people together, all of the NGOs, you can have the conference room at 9 o'clock. And you can participate in drafting something that you want to say. And if you can speak with one voice, like the young people, you can participate for the first time in history in a plenipotentiary. And they did come in at 9 o'clock. They came in at 8 o'clock by the hundreds and hundreds. And even the journalists started to come to our briefings because they were able to find out what was going on without, just by listening in to people who were involved in the conference and gave 5-minute speeches. I want to tell you that because ways have to be found for people to participate. It isn't just by having a vote in dictatorships that have been dictatorships and become elected governments. It's the participation, continuing participation between elections. And the crisis we have most, how do we turn the United Nations into we the peoples instead of just we the member states? And that will mean significant participation when the people who speak for us in the United Nations are elected by us directly. I don't know the answers to all your questions, but that's my feelings. I'll be reading it along with you.
Many thanks to Wayne and also to Anne and Wayne. Thank you very much.